Hi everyone, my name is Peter Alachi. Welcome to Showcase Salem. Tonight my guest is Tessa Venell, who is the producer of The Green Reason, a great environmental film, half-an-hour film, which we're going to show eventually on Showcase Salem next month, hopefully. And we're going to have the great interviews, so stay tuned. Welcome to Showcase Salem. My name is Peter Alachi. My guest tonight is Tessa Venell. Tessa, welcome to the show. Tessa is the one who made The Green Reason, Beijing's emerging environmental movement. It's a film, half-an-hour film about the environmental movement in China. And you made this around late 2000 and...
we were there shooting during the Olympics in
2007, around
2008,
2008. And you made it with Jeff Arak, and Jeff Arak is not here today, but you are representing the team essentially.
I was the producer of the project and Jeff was the director.
He was the director, yeah. So I noticed that with the film, the very first thing that you start with is how China started building before for the Olympics, and they weren't caring at all about the environment, right?
I mean,
they say development first, and then environment can follow, essentially.
Yeah. The focus in China for a long time has been on development, and it's only after they reach a certain threshold, I think, that they can worry about things like the environment, because it's more like a luxury to worry about that. And you can have your kids fed,
yeah,
and you can worry about the environment.
But I mean, the film does say, for example, that in the early 80s, when they started developing the country, environment came in second. And as a result of that, you had the problem with the air quality. The pollution was horrendous, right? They had something called the API index, where it was like 5 times higher than it is in the United States. It was like you couldn't even breathe there. And you show this one scene in the film where the athletes are arriving in Beijing and they had a mask on their faces, and they offended the Chinese somehow, even though the Chinese had shut down factories and got rid of cars in the streets months before, and that did very little to alleviate the pollution problems. So what did the film focus on essentially from that point? What did you focus on?
I had an experience in China in 2005, and I saw the beginnings of this environmental movement, and I was encouraged because it seemed very strong to me, a strong beginning. Where they're coming from is a bad place to start, but
yeah,
they were doing all positive things, and I wanted to come back during the Olympics,
yeah,
and show about the environmental movement as it was just beginning. We focused on, because it's a movement about a movement beginning, so we focused on the Roots and Shoots program from the Jane Goodall Institute, and so it's kids who get small grants from the Jane Goodall Institute to do environmental projects. And through the projects they're doing something that makes you care more about the environment.
yeah.
If you can learn it by doing, I think it sticks more.
Yeah.
And these kids are so cute.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing warmed my heart more than a little girl in China saying, it's just one plastic bag, but it's one plastic bag. And now whenever I use a plastic bag, I think, that's one plastic bag.
Right, yeah.
I should just use reusable bags.
Yeah. No, I remember that segment in the film where the government actually banned plastic bags, and they told people, you have to carry, like we do here, recyclable bags. And that's tremendous. I mean, they had, but it seems like it comes down from the top down. It's not like from the bottom up. But this environmental movement, you saw it from the bottom up. The students were starting it, right?
Exactly, and I think I wondered if it was so explicit in the film, but when I wrote about the movement, it was always that top-down, bottom-up kind of dichotomy, and how in China things happen from the government, and the central government decides something, and everyone does it.
Yeah.
But this movement was different in that the government was allowing these nonprofits to come in and teach the kids to care about the environment, and that to me looked very encouraging.
Now that to me is interesting because you talk about China. It's a country ruled by the Communist Party supposedly, but they're very capitalistic in many ways, especially after Nixon opened China in the 1970s. And you see this rapid development of the country. I mean, it's gone from being a third world country to becoming very modernized. But it's all came at the expense of the environment. And supposedly that the government had this 5-year plan, right? The film talk about the 5-year plan, where people come from the provinces and they meet with the Communist Party, and the Communist Party basically tells them what's the next, what's on the agenda for the next 5 years, essentially, right? And in the last Congress, when you made the film, what was on the agenda was the environment, oddly enough. So the Chinese bureaucrats were cognizant that the environment was suffering, and they wanted that to be on the agenda. And suddenly you saw this green environmental movement. So it seems like it came from the top down, watching this film, not from the bottom up. And the other thing I found interesting is that they don't allow NGOs over there. They don't allow nonprofit organizations to operate, do they?
They do, and the first nonprofit there was the Jane Goodall Institute.
You mentioned that, but generally there was one woman in your program criticizing the government for not allowing the nonprofits. So I wasn't sure how that came about. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's kind of a unclear point, but the government 100% does allow nonprofits. They just make it more difficult.
More difficult.
In the U.S., you get, or in other Western countries, you get a lot of help, but there you don't get the same amount of help.
Not the same amount of help.
But it's changing. The prevalence of nonprofits, especially around the environment, is growing because the government is allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
More and more.
More and more. So you went to China in 2007, 2008, I'm sorry, I keep saying 7, but for some
I was
reason
there in
stuck on that.
05.
In 05,
and then
okay.
again in 08 to shoot the film.
In 08 to shoot the film, okay. So when you went to China, how bad was the pollution there in Beijing itself? How bad, did you have to wear a mask there when you were there? How bad was it to you?
The mask thing is kind of weird. During the Olympics, it rained every night. The clouds were seeded, so it was very controlled. But the sky in the morning was so nice and clear because it had rained every night, and it didn't impact us. I think that the gas mask picture of the U.S. athletes is kind of it's ridiculous. So
that was when they arrived at the airport thinking it was going to be this bad, and they were just protecting themselves.
Which is silly because, I guess their experience in China was more limited.
So it's like being in L.A. almost, right? Los Angeles.
Exactly. And I read something recently about how L.A. has the air quality is comparable to in Beijing.
Comparable to Beijing.
Right.
But you have these, they show Beijing, they show these huge factories with the huge stacks emitting, nitric oxides into the air and carbon dioxide into the air. I mean, that must have an immediate impact on the town, on the city. You would imagine more so than saying LA, where the factories are not allowed to be, those kind of stacks aren't allowed to be in the immediate vicinity, right?
I think that the news that the pictures we see of China it's like if you took pictures in the Bronx in New York, then you think all the U.S. is like that, but it's not true.
Not true.
Right,
yeah.
I think that what comes here is not necessarily representative of all of China. I once heard that someone told me that anything you say about China is true because it's such a diverse country. And with the rapid developments just become more diverse because there's more rich people. The middle class is growing.
Middle class is growing, yeah. So let me ask you a question about, as a filmmaker, when you were working there, did you have Chinese observers from the government who accompanied you on your trips here and there? Or were you pretty much allowed to roam around the country and do what you want?
There were no restrictions.
Really?
We
Yeah.
were way too small, one, and two, the story we were telling is so positive. I mean,
So they asked you about the story, what you were doing when
No.
you came to the country? No?
we had no questions. We talked to no officials.
Isn't that something? You would think you would have talked to someone there.
I think that we,
You just went in and just filmed.
exactly, it's like if you would the government talk to someone who's making a film here? No.
No.
I think
But you think of China as being more restrictive and more controlled, but it's not. It's not.
that's what we
It's not
think
the
of
old China.
It's not the old China, and it's not the China that you see on the news here.
And now people drive cars in China, when in the old days nobody drove cars. I mean, you used to ride bikes a lot, right? And so now the pollution is horrendous as far as driving cars and all that. They drive American cars. They love Buicks, I hear, right?
I don't know. And I've heard that more and more cars the R&D is happening in China.
In China.
They're coming here.
Yeah.
It's less and less.
Less than that. There was this beautiful young Chinese lady, woman who you interviewed. She spoke eloquently with absolutely flawless English accent. She didn't even have an accent. She spoke American almost. Were her parents Americans?
I don't remember which. Do you remember what was she talking about?
It's towards the end of the film. She was a student and.
Oh, a student.
Yeah.
So, we talked to a few students, and
She had no accent at all. She was speaking fluent
one of them
English.
went by her American name was Cherry. Maybe she was very cute, and
Sherry, that's the one. Yeah.
she really hits your heart because
Yeah.
she was so eloquent and
very motivated, right, to do something about it.
Exactly. Kids her age here don't speak other languages
No.
like that.
Yeah.
So I'm very impressed by her.
Yeah. She's the one, I think, in the part where you were talking about recycling. They were doing recycling in schools and how teachers were involved, and the governors of various provinces were also pushing the people to do more about the environment and so on. The other thing I found interesting in the film you brought out is the journalist. And I didn't even notice him the first time I watched the film. The second time I saw him, and he was talking about how journalism in China is made so that they need to bring out any evil in a society. And these are positive things that the Communist Party there in China, that under their constitution, they asked journalists to be involved in bringing out the evil in the society. And he said the environmental issues are evil issues, essentially, that you need to say something about the environment.
I think that just like journalists here, like you try to find a story, and the news here is mostly negative.
Yeah.
So
they're allowed to say some things like this now, when in the past they weren't allowed to say anything like this, as long as they don't criticize the hierarchy too much, right?
I don't know enough about. I mean, I know that around the environments, especially,
They're outspoken.
people have been very successful in bringing out the evils or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I think it will continue to change. It has changed a lot, even since I was there in '05.
Mm-hmm.
I got to reconnect with a lot of my contacts from when I was there in '05.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun. I mean, it was fun to hear them talk about how it's changed.
Yeah. Now you speak Chinese fluently. You said. How did you get to speak to?
I speak. I mean, I can get by.
How did you learn it? Did you just learn it in school? Or?
I took Chinese all through college, maybe 3 semesters, 4 semesters.
Yeah. So when you were in China, you spoke Chinese to them, and they spoke English to you, or how did that work out?
We did. Most of the people, or all of the people acting in the environment field, spoke English.
Isn't that something?
And I told you this before, it's surprising to me how well people just speak good English.
Yeah. I know.
Because it's...
Who was that professor from Tufts University you interviewed? Do you remember his name? I forget his name.
Bill Mula.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. I saw him recently, and
yeah, and he knew a lot about China also, to say a few things about China.
he focuses.
Yeah. So what differences did you find between, say, the Chinese model for environmental model and, say, the American environmental model? One critique I saw definitely brought out by him specifically is that we're not really so much better with the environment as the Chinese. what you think we are, but we really aren't, are we?
I think that because they're starting, it's a brand new thing because it's a brand new thing for them to think about where we have more time, but I think because they're starting from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
it's more,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, well thought out.
It's newer somehow. They're also targeting more the younger generation than the
Exactly.
older ones.
Kids are going to grow up and they're going to make changes when they're older, but
Yeah.
we have to be patient, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And there is what is it, a billion plus people over there in China, so it's a tremendous impact.
You can't change something like that overnight,
Mm-hmm.
especially when there wasn't a concept for any greenness in China.
Greenness.
So first to introduce the concept is so
Mhm.
important, and I think we talked about it in the film a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So let me go back to the title of the film now. It's called The Green Reason, and why is it called The Green Reason? Can you tell us why?
Sure. The environmental movement in China, people refer to it as the green reason, and I forget the translation, but
But it means
that was
environmental
cute.
movement of China.
I thought it was a nice, I mean, to think about the environmental movement as
Mhm.
the green reason, it's the reason, it just seems pretty, like a good, I guess
Mhm.
we didn't go into it knowing.
So now the green movement, and let's talk about green movement and their energy plans for the future. One aspect of that, of course, is that China used to be way behind on green technology, and now they're the leading front and on green technology. So I was surprised to find out most of the solar panels are actually manufactured today in China cheaply.
Exactly.
And the same with wind turbines are also manufactured in China quite a bit. And they're encouraging the public now to go green. So any administrator of a certain town who goes green with his public, he's rewarded now, versus in the old days probably he wouldn't have been. So they have that more emphasis on the environment. So what made them go green suddenly with this technology, with the turbine and with the solar system? Is it profit, or is it really worrying about their country and what?
I think it's
the
both
impact?
things. They see the need for it, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And they also, so seeing the need for it is number one, but also they see the opportunity in it,
Opportunity.
right?
Yeah.
This is a growing movement clearly because it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think that there's no other, you can't wait any longer.
Yeah. So why is the United States waiting, you think? I mean, why aren't we in the forefront of building? I mean, we pioneered solar technology clearly in the 70s. And I remember there was, in the late 70s, Jimmy Carter had a whole section of the White House powered by solar panels, just to make the point that we need to transfer over to, clean energy. So why did we stumble? Why did we fall behind? Why did the Chinese move so far ahead in almost no time with this technology?
In my experience, Chinese people do things very efficiently. There's not, especially if the government has decided this, then they're going to do it. Here, there are so many special interests, and it's impossible, and the people aren't demanding it enough.
Yeah.
I think we don't have the luxury of deciding something and having everyone just do that. Our
Mhm.
central government is obviously not as central.
Yeah. So over there, they decide on what they want to do, and they just
They
do
do it, right?
So in 2 years, they can build this high efficiency train
It's
system,
very
very
efficient.
rapid, right?
Exactly.
Crisscrossing the country, they don't care about what forest they go through or anything, right? They just do it, or town they just do it.
Yes.
Pretty much.
But
Yeah.
I think that more and more we've seen that they are caring if they go through an important forest.
Mhm.
It's changing.
It's changing. So the other thing is
It's changing.
it's changing. So the other thing is the quote I have here from the Chinese kid who spoke very eloquent English, unlike me here. She says, Cherry, her name you said, right? She says, kids are the leading force of the future. And I mean, for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, or however she was, to see that and to say it, I don't think, it's a small thing to hear. So during the Olympics, after they wore the masks and our athletes participated, did they change their mind? Did you find that they took the masks off when they were competing?
Oh yes,
Absolutely,
the masks were taken off as soon as they knew that it was
Safe.
a silly thing to do. But
Yeah.
I think that when the government or Chinese were offended by that because it's
Yeah.
offensive, I'm not going to come into your house and
Right.
wear a mask.
Yeah.
So I think that as soon as they knew it was offensive.
Yeah, they took them off. Because you could see the Chinese people looking at the Americans arriving there with masks on, and they're like,
Exactly.
who are these people?
It's as if going into someone's house and not touching anything.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah. So I think this has a lot to do with the way we covered the Olympics here in our country here. I think we scared people into thinking that you can't really breathe the air in China, and report after report after report before the Olympics portrayed the atmosphere as being horrendous, and it wasn't so, apparently, by the time the Olympics began and ended. So they arrived, and so did things return to normal, so to speak, in China after the Olympics? Did they reopen those factories and spill those cars back on the roads? As far as you know?
The public has demanded that they love the air during the Olympics. But also, I think an important thing to remember, Peter, is that what we know about China without ever having gone there is what the U.S. news tells us about China, which might not be the real China.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because we only saw the negative reports in the air all leading up to it, it changed our idea about what China is, and it's not that. I think that that's important to know, to realize that unless you have personal experiences there, you're only knowing what the U.S. news tells you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's this outlet or that outlet, they're all saying the same thing.
It's pretty negative usually. And I remember, I think, for people of my generation at least, I think, who grew up with Maoist ideology, not that I'm a Maoist, but we grew up, with Mao Zedong as the head of China at the time, and their disastrous policies at the time. For example, in the 60s, they decided that the birds were eating the rice, and let's kill the birds. And suddenly there was this movement where every bird over every field was shot down and killed. As a result, the insects now moved in, and they were spoiling the rods, and there was massive starvations, and millions of people died. So some environmental, to be sort of like you want to feed your people, prevent the birds from eating your food. Instead, the insects now ate your food. So sometimes these decisions weren't well thought of, and I think people my generation grew up with that kind of a China, So now for us to change our mind about what's going on in China is quite a struggle for a lot of us, But it's very, very interesting to see that there is a movement there, and it's a budding movement still today. But the way they're moving ahead is largely because of this push by the government, by the hierarchy, to want the younger generations to participate in their.
In the recent 5-year plan, there was an environmental education mandate. And that's important because these kids now will have some understanding of what it means to care about the environment and what it means if you don't.
Yeah. Now, when you finished with the film, making the film, what did you do? You showed it around theaters in the country here, or in the
I wish.
So tell me what happened.
I screened it locally at Brandeis University a couple times, at World Boston once. That was kind of an exciting one, and at Harvard a few times. Did we screen others? Universities
locally here?
Right.
Yeah, it was well received at the time.
It was fun for me.
It was yeah.
I got to stand up and show my project, and then answer questions afterwards. It was really fun.
Yeah, it's a well-made film. I have to
Thank
say.
you,
Yeah,
thank
really
you.
well made.
It was a fun project to do.
Yeah, it is well. Yeah. So what's on your agenda for the future? What are you doing now, Tessa?
I'm working as a grant writer at a nonprofit called MAP Community Services, where I work. It's called the Ivy Street School, a school for high school age students with brain injuries or other brain-based problems, which is a good job. It's a really nice, cute place to work. You see a lot of individual successes there. And I'm working on a couple of projects also, which I'm more and more excited about. I'm writing a book about a year I spent in 3 different hospitals in 2007, 6 and 7. I got into a car accident in 2006 and I broke 5 bones and got a severe brain injury. So the book is about the support system that helped me recover. My background in journalistic writing is, I'm working with an editor who is also a journalist. So it's a little bit, it's a fun book to work on also. We're working with 3 of my doctors from, I was in Braintree Rehab Hospital, and they've been terrific, very excited about the project and helpful. So we'll see where it goes.
So how far are you in the book?
I have 13 chapters outlined, but maybe 8 are written. The other ones are ideas that will grow when I give them some time.
And these are about your accident and about your recovery from the accident. Now, when I read the article about you, one of the things that was brought out is you don't remember much about your accident. You don't remember at all anything.
I forget a time period of about 5-ish months from before to after. I woke up, or I started to remember things when I was in the 2nd hospital. I was in main med in the ER, ICU, and then went to Braintree for 100 days. I was in the ICU for 5 weeks. I was in a coma for 4-ish. And then I went to Braintree, and then I did outpatient therapy at Portsmouth Regional Hospital for 6-ish months.
So you have, I was reading, short-term memory sometimes lapses. You don't remember certain things as a result of the accident.
There are some lingering problems, and I'm learning more about them. They're changing all the time. I mean, as I kind of focus on a problem, it can, if I give it some time and thought, I can, because it's all neurological.
So when you are writing your memoir, when you're writing about that period, did you make notes? Do you make notes along the way so you can go back and look at those notes? Do you interview people during, say, the 5 months you were out, you were in a coma? Did you interview people about that period as well?
Because the book is focused on my recovery, so we do a little bit before, but it's
mostly about what you went through afterwards.
Exactly, and I'm again talking to my doctors, and they're very helpful. So we give the book a little bit more of a medical twist than a straight memoir. It'll be interesting to read.
Okay. So this is one project. What else is going on beside this?
I'm working with a Chinese producer on a project that she wants to develop for China Education Television, and my piece in that is not producing, but on the distribution end, of getting where she wants to show films made by Chinese nationals who are studying in the U.S. about their experience studying, kind of tapping into the growing interest in higher education in China. Because people have more money and they can send their kids to college now. So there's more and more interest there in that, and she's tapping into that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tessa, for
Thank you.
being with me on the
fun.
show. This is
Thank
so
you
much
so
fun.
much.
Thank you again.